Can imagine.
Hi, everybody. We are going to be talking today. By the way, my name is Rita Young with Participant Directed Advocates of Georgia, and I have Mitzi Profit with me as well. We're going to be talking about the hiring process when you self-direct your Medicaid waiver, whether you're an individual with a disability or the employer of record, whether it's mom or dad or someone else. What that process is like. So the last time we talked a little about recruiting. So you have your perfect candidate or candidates. And just to let you know that it's a process to learn how to hire staff. So don't feel like you are going to get it perfect the very first time. Mitzi and I could certainly tell you stories as well as all the other families about things that have gone not so great. So it's quite all right if it's, you sometimes, what do they say? You have to kiss some frogs before you get a prince or something like that. Not that we do that. Yeah. So you have the perfect candidate. You're going to give them the application packet. And so it's different from each fiscal agent. They probably handle it slightly differently, but the employment application is just like any other employment application. So it has an I-9, you've got to prove citizenship, et cetera, has a job application. It has your 2 tax forms from the state of Georgia and then the federal government. It has several other documents in as well, permission to pull a background check, direct deposit preferences or not, those types of things. What else am I missing in that application, Mitzi? Just basic, it's a basic job application, just like
it's a lot of papers. It's a lot of papers.
It's a lot of
papers.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
And so you will look at those papers, make sure you know that you have reviewed that application packet yourself. So you know what papers are involved. You will give them to the employee. They're going to fill them out. They're going to give them back to you. You will review them and then submit them to the fiscal agent. So the fiscal agent is the one that does the name background check and also the fingerprinting background check. So they do both of those. And then what you'll do is often wait a little bit and see if that application has been done 100% correctly, right? Maybe you left something out, or maybe the employee left something out, and there's human error, right? So you're going to wait and get that application back, either with some feedback or everything is, was done correctly, et cetera. And then they'll move to the background check process. So the fiscal agent's going to do a name background check and also a fingerprint background check. So you'll need to be sure you read the instructions on fingerprinting and how to take care of that. So, and then again, there's a little bit of waiting for that final, and they call it a good to go letter. So the employer of record will get a good to go letter and the employee will get a good to go letter. So you can't start your employee until you have that letter, that acknowledgement that that individual has passed both background checks and that all of their application was processed and it's been done correctly, et cetera. So that's a little bit about the process. And sometimes it goes by quickly. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit of time to get that application back from the fiscal agent. But once you have it back, you are good to go.
The one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the one thing you got to remember is to remind them to bring a copy of their driver's license, social security card. So one thing I always forget, and then one little tidbit that I do is when I have the stack of papers, I go ahead and pre-fill out the parts I know I'm going to have to, because some of the wording sometimes, Rita, is so confusing when it asks for the participant or the employer, and I will mark like where they have to do stuff because they're like, I didn't know about this part or that part, and I will kind of like just make it a little bit easier, only because when you've hired lots of people, that doesn't mean they've always worked out or they don't show back up, but it just seems to make it a little bit easier, because the one form that always kind of freaks them out is the living in exemption form, or also, can you lift this amount of weight?
Yes.
And it's really because of the field that you're working in, and it's a safety measure as well for the employee, as well as the employer, as well as the participant. So always be like, when you take these forms, make sure if you don't understand the terminology, it's kind of scary and confusing. But it's okay if you don't understand it. And if you, and then we as the employer do the form that does the social security card and the driver's license card. We do that verification. So I kind of like, but I'm a little bit OCD maybe, do the tabs and make sure they know where to sign it. Just because, and as a new participant direct employer, these are the tricks you will learn. But it is a little bit intimidating, but it's not hard once you do it. And they do, depending on your physical agent, again, they do have example forms in there to teach you all these tricks as well. But anyway,
That's right. That's right. You bring up a good point. Great point. The I-9, which is the citizen verification document,
Yes.
which is in all documents for job applicants.
Right. Anywhere.
General, anywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
You'll need to review and show, so they need to show proof that they are a citizen, or they have, there's a whole list of documentation that you can accept, right? So you want to make sure that you have that and fill that information out. That is absolutely critical. So that, and then also if individuals don't have a CPR certification, nowadays you can do that online, right? So
or a voided check. The voided check.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. A lot of times you don't have checking accounts, and I'm like, well, you can. A lot of times, depending on your bank, you can go on your bank site, and it will give you a form that you can print that shows that. But like our physical agent, Acumen, you have to have that form. I mean, it pretty much, because you can't just say that's your account number, because anybody can do anything any day. So you got to be secure. It is legit. It is a real job. You are a real employer. So that's one of the things I always just prepare them, like on a sticky. I need your driver's license. I need a voided check. I need your other identification, whatever. So please bring that back with you. If you can't, then we'll make copies. So,
yeah, you're right. And I think you can turn in the application without that voided check.
Yes,
because they can cut a live check. But still, again, like you said, most people don't have checks anymore. You can get a letter from the bank, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer. Exactly. So I go ahead and just send it in, even if I don't have the voided check, because it may take them. Yeah, it can take them a little bit longer. So so that is that application process. And again, you'll get more comfortable with it. And, for those of us, sometimes I may go a few years without hiring a new staff person, and I have to reorient myself on the application again. So don't feel bad.
Things are getting easier.
That happens to you. Yeah, absolutely. So you've hired, and now you are down to the training, right? And so the training is tailored to your son or daughter or yourself as an individual with a disability. And so some folks develop documents for the training. Some folks, it's more informal. And so what I like to do is have sort of an outline of items that I'm going to discuss for that training for my sons. And that seems to work well for me. Mitzi, do you do anything differently? And again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. There is no template to do this. So I think because we are each subject matter experts on either ourselves, if we're a person with a disability, or our sons and daughters, it makes it so much easier. It's not a topic that's unfamiliar to us. Yeah.
So with Joshua, we have to use medical equipment. So I'm very hands-on as far as, because we're not want people to be hurt, or I don't want the employee to be hurt. So in the beginning, it's a lot of watching and overseeing and making sure that the equipment's been used right and they're using it as they were trained. And then many times it will be a spot check afterwards, because I will know usually by the how I can hear him, because he's not always going to tell them like you're doing that wrong, but then I will ask him afterwards, did you feel uncomfortable? Because a lot of times they'll say things to me being the parent versus the new worker, because they're intimidated, and not to get them in trouble. And then the staff themselves could be scared I was doing it wrong. And then they sometimes are nervous because I am watching them, which is typical of anybody. It's like somebody hovering over you when you're starting a new job. So I watch a lot of times with the equipment, and then I will spot check, and I will check off if they are using that equipment, because sometimes if you're not there, they might be easier to do it a different way. Same thing with medical supplies. We have a rule here. They have to do that check off, because Joshua himself which will be like, have you checked this off? Because that's part of his, I want him to be responsible of self-determination, as well as being responsible what's here to keep up with supplies, needs, what have you cleaned, what have you not. And it's a good learning process for them. And then again, we'll go back usually every 3 months and they're like, oh, we forgot. It's just so easy to slip. And I'm like, I'm not going to do everything as would you do this in a typical job? Oh, it is a typical job. Then that just a little bit of a checkup will be like, okay, we forgot to do that. So it is very hard because you become complacent. We all do in any job. So, but it is, and then when it's time to review that person, I have made notes that, and they're like, okay, now I do see why it's so important because we have to order something, or especially with equipment. Equipment has to be plugged back up. It won't work the next day. And that's very important when you have to have that piece of equipment, or if you're showering somebody, it's very detrimental to hurting somebody. So that's the different part of somebody who has a lot of physical contact with somebody who is depending on you, especially if you're taking somebody's vehicle. You know, did you feel with them safely driving you? Was an incident unloading? How were they parked? I mean, it's all those things to me are a training component that takes us a while before that trust level is there. And that is a lot of training for us. It usually takes like 6 months, which sounds like a long time, Rita, but it is not when it comes to a person's life. Because I'll be the first one to tell you, you are taking care of the most important thing to me in my life. So
right.
that's a constant training of an employee in a different kind of job. And then we get into the behavior part. So it's a whole different training.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So the
yeah.
behavior part, as far as things that have worked for me in the past, is I give scenarios and examples of things that have happened and how we have handled them. And so that might be something that you do if that is more your concern, rather than the medical side of things. It just depends, again, what your individual needs. And I also try not to hold anything back. I will usually give worst case scenarios and say, this is probably never going to happen to you. But if it does, I want you to know, how we handle it.
We do that too.
I hope by doing that, you build a certain level of trust with the individual, So in other words, I would recommend to be as transparent as you possibly can, right?
Yeah, we don't sugarcoat nothing.
We don't want to, we want people to know what it's really like,
Yes. Yes.
So we've talked about applications and training. In our next session, I think we're going to move on to budgets. So we're wanting to keep these short and sweet and to the point. And so we'll be on later this week to talk about budgets. And tell us, by the way, do you like these videos? And we have our conference coming on August the 26th. Yep. We are on Facebook at Participant Directed Advocates of Georgia. And we have a beautiful graphic on there today telling you about the conference. So we'd love to see you in person. And if you're not able to come, you can register and be online and participate virtually. So thank you so much. And we'll see you again soon.
Have a good week.